All right. So let's start with Tanya. So last week, Erez was reading so beautifully the introduction to the Tanya. It's actually the Alter Rebbe's introduction. We just did the first half of it, but I thought maybe it would be better if we actually jump straight into Perek Aleph. So just to give you an overview, whether you learned Tanya before or you didn't learn Tanya at all, let's start with the basics. I think it'll be, I learned Tanya many times. I do it every day for Chitas, but I actually never understood Tanya well enough until I started learning to prepare a class for my community. And now we're up to Perek Yud Gimel, and it's actually changed my life. Now, we always hear how Tanya changes so many people's lives. My parents were inspired and became from thanks to the Tanya and so many people. And, you know, we learn it when we're 14 years old and we're like, wait a minute, what's so inspiring from this? So I think it's an important idea to understand the better basics of Tanya. And Erez, don't worry, even though it's recorded, you could take a call. It's just
all right. Sorry, it's my wife.
Yeah, for sure.
Mushki? Okay, coming. Bye.
The Alter Rebbe wrote that the reason why he's writing Tanya in a book is because there's so many people coming for information, and he didn't have time to meet with everyone. And then what he realizes that there are people that are having the same problem, coming with the same questions. So the Alter Rebbe thought that it would be better if I could give it out there and everyone could have the information as needed. And also, what happened is people were forgetting what the Alter Rebbe was telling them. Hey, Levi. So a lot of people, Levi, you're not driving from Jacksonville? I guess not. I can't hear you, but okay.
Levi, you're on mute.
Sorry, I drove back last night, so.
Okay. Right, cool. So anyway, we're learning about what Tanya is, and we'll see how it goes. So the Alter Rebbe decided that instead of, he also saw that some people were coming with, hold on, let me just put this thing, with a problem that they would forget what the Alter Rebbe told them. They would have to come back a year later to be reminded. So the Alter Rebbe said, let me write it down. So the Rebbe Rashab actually says that every perek of Tanya is like a new yechidus between you and the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe, in his foresight, he said this is to be written for everyone in the community. And what the Alter Rebbe means by that is not only for his generation community, it's for all generations. So it's so important to, whether we understood and learned Tanya before or not, to kind of put all that we know on the side, the cliche words of two souls and Beinani and all the words that we are familiar with, but we don't know what it means. I actually reset it myself in my own mind, and I've been able to teach it and learn it with our community. And I've seen wonders, just even in how I approach life and how I make decisions. It's been really, really helpful to really control ourselves and to really see the best in us and to allow us to have that outside of us also. So let's talk in general. We're going to try to discuss some big ideas, what Tanya discusses in every perek, and also see how that fits into the flow of Tanya. Because there's a flow, there's a theme. I never understood the theme of Tanya from how the Alter Rebbe gets from chapter 1 to chapter 2 all the way through, how that there's a system, and there is a system, and yet it takes time to appreciate how that system wrote. So let's start with the basics. What is Chassidus? Because Tanya is the foundational book of Chassidus. We know it as the Torah Shebechsav, the written law of Chabad. Whereas the rest of Chassidus, Memarim, and everything is all the oral, is all the Torah Shebal Peh. But it starts founded on Tanya. So Tanya was written by the Alter Rebbe, and in the introduction to the Tanya in this fancy green book that we have here, you could actually learn more about the Alter Rebbe's life. Erez knows about the Alter Rebbe's life. I think you were saying from your daughter.
That biography book.
The biography,
that orange book.
Right. So the way we know Chassidus, what Chassidus is, it's taking the highest and deepest levels of Kabbalah, deepest parts, and revealing it and teaching it and applying it in a very practical way. So it's not remaining abstract, however high and lofty of an idea it is, it's actually being brought down in the very day-to-day, very practical. So Chassidus obviously started with the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov had 60 students. He passed away in 1760, and he was succeeded by the Maggid, Rabbi Dov Ber, which is Erez's, your middle name is Dov?
Yeah.
So David Ber was the Mezitcher Magid. He actually had double the amount of Talmidim. He had 120. One of them was the Alter Rebbe. He was actually the youngest. Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev was one of the oldest. And Beli Melech and Zusha, Zusha Anipali, and Reb Elimelech Levizensk, and Menachem Melech Hardaker. All those were Talmidim of the Magi. And then when the Magi died, they each had their own approach of Chassidus that they learned from their teacher and their teacher's teacher. And we know that the Alter Rebbe's approach was, in one word, Chabad. Chabad doesn't mean social service. Chabad doesn't mean outreach. Chabad means applying the concepts of Torah in your mind and allowing that to be the focus that affects the feelings of the heart, that affects the actions that come as a result. So that's really what Chabad means. It's my Chachma Bina Das. We'll understand that obviously more through learning the Tanya, but it's an approach to Yiddishkeit that starts with the mind. Whereas other Hasidus, a lot of them start with the feeling. It's all about the emotions. Therefore, you'll see Breslev and whatever Hasidim, a lot of them is done with great rapture and emotion in their davening and in their day-to-day. Whereas Chabad is much more focused, much more mind primary based. So if you want to stereotype a chassid, you think of a person dancing with a kapata. But if you want to stereotype a Chabad chassid, it's actually someone focused like this in davening. There's an incredible picture, beautiful picture of the Frierdiker Rebbe. You see him by his desk writing, and he's like just deep in thought. That's a Chabad chassid. Is they're thinking, they're focusing, they're disciplining their mind to think a certain thing, meditate on a certain thing, and that affects the feeling of the heart, and again, the output to the outside world. And that's the approach of Chassidus. Okay, so Tomer says he'll join next week. And the point is that what we think about will affect the feeling towards it, and will affect our action about it. So this is the approach of, let's go through what the approach of Tanya is. What it's not, what is Tanya? I'll tell you what it's not. Tanya is not an encyclopedia, which means it's not just a bunch of ideas that are categorized by letter, and you have to find it somewhere in there. There's actually an instruction through the theme of Tanya. And what I mean by that is, if someone's going to the library, you could go to a self-help section, and you have a bunch of instructional, if you want to learn how to cook, and you want to learn how to fundraise, or you want to learn how to learn management and accounting, or you want to learn real estate, there's self-help books that you could go to the library, and it gives you two types of things. There's informational books and instructional books. Informational books gives you information on a topic. Instructional books tells you a method of doing things. Let's say there's instructional books for time management. It's a pretty common one. Erez, is my screen dark? I think it's just the time of day. The sun is on this side.
It's a little tiny bit, but it's fine.
Okay.
I see you perfectly fine.
Okay, you hear me? Okay, fine. So Tanya is not an encyclopedia. Tanya has a flow, and it's Tanya has a flow. And let's see. So, actually, I just want to explain this important part. Tanya is actually both instructional and informational. What I mean by that is the point of Tanya is to be a pocketbook guide of how to live life. So it's not a bedtime reader. Let me just read a line here or there. It's actually a program that you have to sign up for, you have to follow, and you'll see incredible results. But in order for any instructional book to work, to tell you how to live and to guide you, you first need information. Take, for example, a recipe. If you open up a cookbook, there's a recipe which tells you to preheat the oven and to mix the margarine with the chocolate chips. And I don't know, it doesn't sound like such a good recipe anymore, but whatever it is, there's a recipe.
Keep going. You're doing good.
There's a recipe. But before you're filling in the recipe, following the recipe instruction, you first need the ingredients. You need to know what you have on the table, and then you crack the egg and you mix it with this, and then you can go through the instruction. But you need to start with the information. So the first 8 chapters of Tanya, which what I see a lot, and I think this happens with me, is you don't understand what the Alter Rebbe is trying to get to in the first few chapters. You kind of just give up, and you'll mumble the words after because of chitas. But a lot of the important parts, take a bird's eye view, take an outside perspective, and realize that the point of the first 8 chapters is to give you the information, 2 souls, a good side, a bad side, what the feelings of the heart is, and what the makeup of our soul is. Once you have that, then we're ready for the instruction, which begins on chapter 9. So really, in many yeshivas, they start actually Tanya in chapter 9, because that's where the instruction, what to do, what to think, how to discipline yourself. But learning the 8 chapters properly will give you an entirely new perspective of Tanya. So I kind of want to do that. And it just might be, I guess my warning to you is that it's a long haul style learning, which means you're not going to be inspired just from 3 weeks of learning. If you stick it out for 4 months, and if you can't make it live, we could make a recording. Like you'll start seeing what Chassidus is. You'll start understanding the real makeup of your neshama, and you could really change your life. But it takes time to get the information. Just like any recipe, you can't just make it up on your own. I mean, you could, but it's not going to taste delicious. You need to put in the effort to put all the information, go shopping, get the ingredients, and then you could go through a recipe. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to start with the first 8 chapters. Okay, so Tanya is the instruction, Tanya is information. You need to start with getting the information out there, and then you could go through the instruction. Okay, so now let me tell you a little more of what Tanya is, and then we can start it inside. Tanya is a process of achieving perfection. Tanya is working on how you can do perfect. And you could say, no, I'm not perfect. You're talking to the wrong person. That's maybe true. We actually are not perfect. And the Alter Rebbe is going to make that very clear in chapter 1, that we are not perfect. But even though we're not perfect, we can actually do perfect. So I'm going to jump the gun here a little bit. We know that there's the cliche words from the Tanya is going to be the tzaddik, the rasha, the beinoni. But the point is that the tzaddik is not just a good guy, and the rasha is not just a guy that robs a bank. A tzaddik means a holy person. It means a person who's always inspired. It's a person that doesn't have any desires other than connecting with Hashem. It's a person who doesn't have any impulse and fantasies other than what Hashem wants. So if a person could go through 24 hours, here's a tzaddik test. If a person could go through 24 hours and not have one impulse, one thought, one negative feeling about that person, and nothing desirable for themselves other than what Hashem wants, meaning they don't have a craving for ice cream or steak, because it's not part of Hashem's plan. It could be kosher. But a tzaddik is someone that doesn't have any desire other than Hashem. So I'll just break the ice right here and tell you, unfortunately, everyone besides for Erez Friedman on the call is not a tzaddik. I'm kidding, Erez. And on the opposite side, what is a rasha? A rasha is actually not just a wicked person. That sounds like a very intense term. A rasha is actually a weak person. Meaning a rasha is someone who gives in to what their mind is telling them.
That sounds more like me.
So it's not always bad. It's just compromise. They're weak. So let's say, just give you an example. A person who decides he's going to quit smoking. So he decided he's going to quit, but what happens a day later? He has a big urge, and he left a pack of cigarettes in his drawer, upstairs dresser, or whatever, that he's able to pull out another cigarette in case of emergency. So the guy didn't really
starts
quit.
vaping.
Exactly. He didn't really quit. He's just quitting until the next, until he needs it again. A quitter is someone who threw everything out, doesn't give them any option or chance, or he's not even going to go to a setting where they're all smoking because he's going to have an urge. It's going to be very hard for him. So a rasha is a person who has temptations, like all of us, and he gives into his temptations, like all of us. It's not even the extent of what he's doing that is so bad. It's the idea that he's weak. It's the idea that he gave in. That's what actually categorizes him as a Russia. So don't think a Russia is that bad. It's actually all of us. We're going to learn more details of levels of Russia. There are some Russias that are really bad, meaning they don't have a conscience. They don't care. They couldn't care less. They don't give a hoot. That's a category of Russia. Hopefully none of us are on that level. But the level that I am on is the level of a Russia that can't help themselves because they're weak. So they could decide not to do this. But when the temptation is so strong and when the urge is so real, they give in. And then they're remorseful and they say, I'm not doing that again. And then they find themselves doing it right again. So in chapter 12, Perek Beis, we're going to get into that concept of a Beinoni, where the Beinoni is somewhere in between the tzaddik and the Rasha. He's not as holy as a tzaddik, meaning he has his own impulses and urges, but he's also not as weak and compromised as the Rasha. The Beinoni is the struggler, the in-betweener, which I'll just jump the gun over here just to whet your appetite a little bit, is the person who, and let's put that on the side for a second. Let me just introduce the new concept. Chapter 1 introduces, Perek Aleph introduces the incredible doctrine of two souls. It's an incredible idea. And the unfortunate thing is because we hear it so often, it lost its value. But the question that we all have, if I really meant it, I wouldn't have faltered again. If I like in terms of, let's say, quitting to smoke, I never was a quitter because I did it again. A Beinoni is someone who, let's put the Beinoni on the side. A person could feel like a hypocrite. I told myself not to do it. I told myself not to scream at that person. I told myself not to eat that. And I did it again. I thought those thoughts again. So that really means I never really was in a genuine, pure, holy place if I'm back to square one. So the Alter Rebbe says, you're actually right. That would be true if we had one soul. If you had the same soul that could be either thinking holy things or thinking inappropriate things, you're right, you're a hypocrite. You may be faking it this way, but really your true colors are coming out. But the fact is that we actually have two souls. We have a nefesh elokis and a nefesh bahamis. In Perek Aleph, the Alter Rebbe goes into the nefesh bahamis, the animal soul, because that's the soul that comes into our body first. Chapter 2, we'll talk about the godly soul. So the animal soul, and just to answer the question, because you have two souls, it's just which one is in control at that moment. So there are times when your nefesh elokis is in control and you're on top of the world. And there's times when your nefesh bahamis overtakes it. And your nefesh elokis is kind of surrendered. And then it gives in to all of its temptations. So
as a Russia, does the nefesh elokis really ever have total control?
A Russia could work on himself, yeah. A Russia, so let's just get back to the Beinoni. The Beinoni is someone who is fighting, which means, so actually, let's just translate those nefesh elokis and nefesh bahamis terms to the tzaddik, and the Russia, and then the Beinoni. The tzaddik is one that he won the fight already. There's no urges other than Hashem. So he doesn't even have a nefesh bahamis anymore. He had it. David HaMelech had a nefesh bahamis, but he fought it off. He fought it off through fasting, which is not the method in our generation, the Rebbe says, but it worked in his generation. The David HaMelech says, the libi chalal bekirbi, my heart is empty of any negative trait. That's where the nefesh bahamis is, and his heart was emptied from it. It was hollow. So the tzaddik is one that he doesn't have any urges other than Hashem. That's his whole desire, because the only one speaking to him is the nefesh elokis. The Rasha and the nefesh bahamis doesn't have a voice. The Rasha is kind of the opposite, where his nefesh bahamis is so strong, and the more averis he's doing, the more on the vicious cycle turn he's on, and the stronger his nefesh bahamis is getting, which means the weaker his nefesh elokis, his godly soul, is getting. What happens as a result is nefesh elokis doesn't even really have a voice. It's so weak. It can't put up a fight anymore. So the Rasha, his weakness brings about more weakness, and he's in this vicious cycle, and he feels bad for what he did because his nefesh elokis is still there. But a day later, or a week later, or a month later, or a year later, he's back to where he was. So it's not. We'll see in chapter 11 for the. Oh, I think we have someone joining. Hey, I have to make a bracha mechai hamesim. My goodness. I see Tomer.
Even angels have srafim.
What?
Said even angels have srafim.
I'm
I
going
don't
to
know
meet
if
you,
you were there
Tomer.
for that.
Hey, Tomer.
What's up, my
Menachem, you weren't
brother?
there you were there that year, no, Menachem?
Of what,
When
say again?
Tomer's famous quote.
What was it?
It was during a Farbrengen, Tomer's famous quote that even angels have srafim.
I don't remember. Either I was too drunk or I tried to block that whole year out. That I don't one or the other. But it's good to see you, Tomer.
Yeah, you too, brother.
So
I'm cleaning up. I'm cleaning up. Don't mind me. I'm just listening.
okay, perfect. So we're talking about the tzaddik, the Rasha, the Beinani. So contrast to the tzaddik, the Rasha is one who's just weak. He's not a bad guy. He really means well. He's weak, and therefore he can't help himself. He needs someone on the outside to help him. And the Tanya and a mentor is all the necessary requirements for this person to get help. And we're all on that status, by the way. We're all weak. So it's not necessarily the quantity of how often they're doing it, because a Rasha could be someone who's doing it every day, or he's doing it once a year. It's the idea that he gives into his weaknesses whenever it comes up. So the Beinani, to answer your question, the Beinani is the person who, on the inside, he still has a fight. He's not the tzaddik, which means he still has an nefesh bahamis inside of him. But he can control himself. The Beinani is still in control. He's not giving into the weakness of the Rasha because he doesn't even allow it as an option. It's not negotiable. And we all know we could actually make that resolution. The example of, let's say, quitting to smoke is, if it's not negotiable, it's doable. We all know people that went cold turkey, that quit smoking. And they're not Hercules, they're not these strong, whatever. It's just people that made a resolution and they're sticking to it. Just like a marriage. You're in a marriage, you're committed. So a Beinani is committed to not do an Avera. That may seem like a very lofty thing. Point of Tanya is to realize that the Beinani is actually not perfect. He has major impulses going on inside of him. He has a raging desire, but he controls himself. He doesn't let that impulse come to the surface and take over his speech, or he's not going to act on it, or he's not going to even think about it.
So, in other words, the Beinani mostly has his nefesh halikis in control most of the time. Mostly, or if not all the time.
Yeah, you're saying his nefesh bahamis. Oh, you're saying his nefesh halikis is the one in control.
Yeah. Mostly, if not all the time. No?
So it's hard to say in control. He's acting on the outside. He looks like a tzaddik. On the outside, he's behaving right. But he knows on his inside, he has these fiery desires, these passions that is really inappropriate. But every time it comes up, and it could be 30 times a day, he pushes it away. He'll focus on something else. So it's the best example to explain the Beinani and the Rasha is we all have that time when we're just doing our thing on a computer and a pop-up comes up. And that pop-up is inappropriate. No matter what good filter you put in, there's going to be that pop-up that makes it through. When you're on ads or whatever.
That's why I don't put filters. I like those pop-ups. No, I'm kidding.
So because Tomer loves the workout that needs to happen when you X that pop-up. So a Rasha sees the pop-up and he can't control himself. He clicks on it. It's not even his fault. He's just so weak. The Beinani is able to say X, able to say not for me, and not even able to say forever. It's like right now, I'm not going to give in. He's not planning the next moment. He's like, right now, I'm going to remain strong. And a Beinani is someone who acts 1 minute at a time. He takes this minute to work on this minute. Ask any football player or hockey player, and you ask them about, oh, you're playing so-and-so in top 5 games. Their cliche answer is, right now, I'm focused on the next game. And the same as with a Beinani, they say, I'm focused on the next 5 minutes.
Living in the moment.
Living in the moment. It's a very good example of it, that expression. There was a big, for Erez, do you have connections to Benoit? Why do I think you have connections to Benoit? Do you?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So there was a big mashpia, and you're connected to Geja, so maybe that's where I'm mixing it up. But there was a big mashpia in Benoit. His name was Reb Nissen Nemenov. and Nissen Nemanov, and his son now, Itcha Nemanov, is the big mashpia and in charge of Bernwa Yeshiva. But his father was a very big person in Chabad, a big chassid, and the biggest compliment you could give to Chabadnik is actually not to say you're a tzaddik, because they know you're lying. To say you're a Beinani, it's like, wow, come on, are you serious? You think I'm a Beinani? That's like a big status. So they say about Reb Nissen Nemanov that he was a Beinani of the Tanya, which means he never said anything inappropriate. He never thought anything inappropriate. He never acted on anything inappropriate. And he once came to visit Montreal. He had family in Montreal, and he was staying by his family. And there was a rumor in Montreal that he's a Beinani. So his 5 and 8-year-old great nephews were sharing a room with him, and they said, "Fetter," which means uncle. We hear that you're a Beinani. Is that true? And he says, Beinani? He don't want to lie. So he said, you could also be a Beinani. And they're like, a Beinani? How? So he said, go to your room and say Tehillim. So the boys went to the room, and for 5 minutes, they said Tehillim. So after 5 minutes, their uncle Nissen Nemanov walked in and he said, how did you do? What were you doing for the past 5 minutes? What was I doing? I was saying Tehillim.
So you were Beinani for 5 minutes.
And what was I saying? I was saying Tehillim. What were you thinking? Were you thinking anything inappropriate? He said, no, I was thinking, what does my uncle want from me for saying Tehillim? But I was just saying the words of Tehillim. I wasn't thinking anything inappropriate. I wasn't speaking anything inappropriate. I wasn't doing anything inappropriate. The Nissen Nemanov said, perfect. You're a Beinani. This was a 5-minute Beinani moment for you. Keep that up every 5 minutes, and you're a Beinani. So that's like in the moment, as Erez was saying, that's exactly what a Beinani is. There's someone who realizes that he could master himself. It's a powerful idea. So having said all that, so to understand more of this idea of the Beinani, we first have to understand, like I was telling you before, Erez, is the information before we get to the instruction. Once you understand the information, which is the first 8 chapters, it's a little long, but when you get through that, then the rest really just adds up so beautifully. So the information that we have first is, let's just even go through some of the questions. The problem, the way the Alter Rebbe, like any sefer, we start with Gemara termed with contradictions that the Alter Rebbe spends the whole time you're trying to answer. The original question is that it says in the Gemara, and it says in many places, let's just take one of the main questions. Even if people are telling you you're a tzaddik, look at yourself like a Rasha. So it's very confusing because in some places it says, don't be a Rasha on your own. Don't be a Rasha. And it's even an oath that the neshama is told before it comes down into the world, be a tzaddik. But if everyone's telling you you're a tzaddik, you should be like a Rasha. And if you're a Rasha and you give in to and say, fine, I'm a Rasha, you're going to be sad. You can't serve Hashem with sadness. And Rabba,
no?
You're right, absolutely. Start, fake it until you make it. But
if you're going to think of yourself as a Rasha, you're really going to be one also, no?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's part of the question. Exactly, Aaron. So therefore, like, who am I? What am I? That's what Perek Aleph is coming to understand, is what am I made up of? What's my DNA? And there's a little more commentary with Rabbah, who is a great sage. He says, I'm a Beinani. Abai, his son, his student said, if you're a Beinani, what do you leave us to be? Because Rabbah never stopped saying Torah his whole life. And he's considering himself a Beinani. So what we need to do is redefine Tzaddik, Rasha, Beinani. Tzaddik doesn't just mean good guy and innocent. Tzaddik means a person who doesn't have an animal soul. So we have to first understand what an animal soul is. We have to understand what a godly soul is. Then Perek Gimel will explain the DNA of that godly soul and how it connects with Hashem. Then it's going to explain the DNA of the animal soul. And then we could go into the fight that takes place between and how to achieve self-mastery, discipline, and self-control. So in Perek Aleph, the final thought, we could then try to learn some inside, is the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal soul. It seems like a horrible guy, an animal. Now, animals are nice. They're just thinking about themselves. Animal is itchy. It'll scratch itself either on a palm tree or on a Lexus It's itchy. It wants to get itch. It's hungry. It wants its food. Actually, the best example to explain an animal soul is actually a baby. A baby. We know that actually the way that Tanya words it is first he introduces the animal soul, then he introduces the godly soul, because that's how it comes into our body. We first get our animal soul, and then by the bris we get our godly soul, and by the bar or bas mitzvah we get the full godly soul. But the first one in our body is actually the animal soul. What does it think about itself? It's hungry. It's going to cry for food. It doesn't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It wants food. If it has a dirty diaper, it wants to get changed. The baby wants to get changed. It doesn't care that it's waking up the whole house and it's being inconsiderate, because all it thinks about is itself. It's not even a bad thing. It's just the way Hashem made a baby on purpose. It starts with its animal soul. So an animal soul, in one word, or I guess 2 words, is self-preservation. An animal soul cares about keeping itself alive. Survival. It's a survival instinct. That's why it's called animal, because it's not animal like in a mean way and in a rough way. It's just animal that it thinks about itself. So once it's thinking about itself, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm going to lash out my anger. You know what this person did to me? So anger, ego, jealousy, comparisons, laziness, sadness. We'll get more into sadness and depression later, because that's a bigger chapter. That's chapter 1, where it's explaining the animal soul characters, the trait of the animal soul.
Question for you.
Yeah.
A tzaddik is, in most cases, is born a tzaddik, correct?
So no, there's actually in general, there's 2 categories of tzaddik. Hashem knew that every generation needs that tzaddik. So like Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was born into it, was born to the highest degree of tzaddik. To answer your question a little more, perek Aleph, it actually introduces 2 types of tzaddikim. A tzaddik gamor and a tzaddik she'enei gamor. A complete tzaddik, a tzaddik that has no bad at all. He's basically born with it, born that way. But then there's also,
in other words, not born with any nefesh habamis.
Yeah, like totally one track. That's a gift from Hashem. That's not our aspiration to get to. Then there's also a tzaddik that it was born with an animal soul, but it worked on itself so hard, like David HaMelech, that it fought it off. That the animal soul is surrendered. He puts up his arms and he says, I'm not even going to fight you. I love what you're doing so much, I'm going to join your side. So the animal soul is going to take his energy and a malistic passion and channel it and be he not only is not an enemy anymore, he's actually an ally. He turned over and he's not only made peace with him, he's on your side. So the animal soul doesn't have a voice of negativity anymore. It doesn't have a voice of self anymore. So that's a tzaddik, and it's not our work out. It's not an aspiration of ours. But we'll see. There's times when we could be a tzaddik. But I think the Alter Rebbe actually wrote a sefer for tzaddikim. Our Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book for the Beinanim. There's also a sefer Shel Tzaddikim that apparently was burnt. Never made. Right? Tomer, you knew that, right?
Yeah, his son was supposed to read it. He didn't have the chutzpah. He didn't read it. So his father was a little saddened about it.
Uh-huh. Cool. So
can somebody who's a tzaddik become a Rasha?
Good question.
Is that possible?
No, because if that his true colors come out. If he ever had that animal soul impulse that's getting him to do something, then he never was really a tzaddik. A tzaddik is one that is fully surrendered.
So what about Shlomo Melech towards the end of his life? Was he still considered a tzaddik?
Who said he was a tzaddik to begin with?
I guess.
What was wrong with David HaMelech?
Oh, you were asking about Shlomo Melech.
Oh, okay.
Shlomo Melech at the end of his life, like he did, I think there was a mental health. Like really, he was confident in his ability to remain loyal and strong. And therefore, he felt I could take horses from Egypt and I could marry the princess of Egypt, and it affected him. It affected him. So we'll see in Perek Yud Beis, a Beinoni can never become overly confident, because we all know that the second a football player is overly confident, and starts the celebration too early. If you ever see those bloopers when the guy is not yet in the end zone, he already throws up the ball and starts dancing, and he never even made it into the end zone. There's all these, clips you can watch. But the idea is that you can't be cocky or overly confident, and you have to realize your true colors. So
Levi wrote 2 examples over here also.
Say again?
Levi wrote 2 examples over here also. The Kohen Gadol that's straight off.
Oh, cool.
There's
also Yechanan Kohen Gadol is actually a great example. I just saw Chassid Shavark on Yechanan Kohen Gadol.
Wasn't there a thing with the Rav Papa or somebody used to follow him on the horse on Shabbos to listen to him speak Torah or something like that?
Elisha ben Avuya, very good. His name was Elisha ben Avuya, like Levi put in the comment. And then he became known as Acher because he went over. But Reb Meir, who was a student, would still listen to his Torah while his teacher would ride on a horse. Yeah, all those cool stories. Just about Yechanan Kohen Gadol, I just saw this, and it's about the tzaddiks. I'll share it. And thank you, Levi, for pointing that out. Yechanan Kohen Gadol, he was a Kohen Gadol during the Second Temple era for 80 years. That's a massive time. In the second Beis Hamikdash, the average lifespan of a Kohen Gadol was 12 months, because none of them were worthy of it. They buy the rights from the Roman governors that were governing Israel. And they were able to do it with money. And by the time Yom Kippur came around, and they went in, they never made it out because they weren't fit for the job. But Yechanan Kohen Gadol, he was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years. 80 years. And he had some amazing teachings and lessons. What happened is he became a heretic. He became a heretic. He totally left the path of Torah. Could you imagine? He successfully went into the Kohen Gadol to Yom Kippur, Kodesh Kodashim 80 times, and then he just walks out and says, "I'm done." So and what is a heretic? How do you pronounce a heretic in Hebrew? It's called a tzeduki, or in English it's called a sadducee in the Art Scroll terminology. It's a tzeduki, because the person that started the movement of heretics, his name was Tzadok. So they became known as the tzedukis. So Yechanan became a tzeduki. What?
Isn't heretic someone that doesn't believe in Torah?
Yeah, and Yechanan Kohen Gadol became a heretic.
Yeah, but I thought tzeduki are the people that did stuff literally from the Torah and didn't listen to the rabbis.
Oh, I think, yeah, so that's exactly what it is. They don't
They
believe
did dafka.
Gotcha.
They were the ones that did dafka.
Yeah, I think, Tomer, you're right. I think maybe heretic is the wrong word. He went to...
In between their eyes and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And they count the Omer, they do Pesach, Machras,
Tomer, how do you know so much about him?
What?
How do you know so much about him?
What do they say? There's people that are in the closet, like 7-7, like Mishachis. I'm like in the closet tzeduki when no one's looking. I put that,
So Levi says he probably needed a hug, but it's cute because what happened is he became a tzeduki. So the Chassidish explanation for it is he after 80 years he started considering himself to be a tzaddik. A tzeduki is similar to the word tzaddik. After 80 years, he's like, you know what? I'm actually really good at this. I'm actually fit for this. And that's when his downfall began, when he started becoming overly confident. And that was his downfall. So that's a great example, Levi, about Yechanan Kohen Gadol. So anyway, the point is, what we know so far is I want to tell you, just to spice it up a little bit, the doctrine of 2 souls is going to be repeated over and over again. I'll tell you right from the get-go, there's actually 3 souls. Just one soul is not talked about. The godly soul, the nefesh elikis, and we have the animal soul, which we're discussing now in chapter 1, which is the animal soul that's all it cares about is self-preservation. And negative traits come from this animal soul because it cares about itself. So if it's hungry, it's going to eat. If it's whatever, it's all about itself. The godly soul, all it cares about is the greater good. All it cares about is what Hashem wants from it. It doesn't care about anything else. All it wants is to cleave with Hashem. There's actually a 3rd soul, which is called the nefesh hasichlis. The nefesh hasichlis means the intelligent soul. The intelligent soul just wants to make sense out of it all. It wants to do what is best for it. So both the animal soul and the godly soul are trying to convince the nefesh hasichlis, the intelligent soul, of its way. come on my side. So it's trying to, let me word that again, not only to come on its side, but to convince the other soul to get to its side. So let's start with this one. The animal soul is saying, this chocolate bar is just delicious. This money is just very tempting. This person is very attractive. Whatever it is, it wants it. It's thirsty. It's hungry. It's whatever it is. So it needs everyone on board to fully get what it wants and get control over the body. So it calls up the nefesh hasichlis, the intelligent soul, and says, let the godly soul know that this is the best thing. And the godly soul feels surrendered. On the other hand, the godly soul tells the nefesh hasichlis, tell the animal soul that what I have, my mitzvah that I'm doing, sitting in a sukkah, even when it's raining, is the best thing for your neshama. Or whatever Shabbos and Shavuos and learning Tanya, this is the best thing for my neshama, and it even tries to convince the animal soul to get on board. So the nefesh hasichlis is the go-between, the mediator between the two sides, trying to get them. So you actually don't see the nefesh hasichlis talked about in Tanya, because the nefesh hasichlis is the one the whole Tanya is talking to. So like, I'm not really mentioning your name because I'm talking to you. So over here, the nefesh hasichlis is not talked about because it's being talked to. The Alter Rebbe is talking to the nefesh hasichlis, telling it about both sides, the nefesh elokis, the godly soul, and the nefesh bahamis, the animal soul.
So we have three souls.
We have three souls. Just one of them is not talked about because it's the interface between.
It's the mediator.
Exactly. So it's not talked about because either it's listening to this side or it's listening to that side. But which side it's the one thinking. It's us. We're the nefesh hasichlis listening to the two sides. In our mind is the safe zone of the nefesh elokis, and the left part of our heart, which is the safe zone of the nefesh habehamis. Okay, so that's my little intro. But Era, so what do you think? Should we learn it inside?
Yeah, I think better to see the words.
Awesome. Okay, so are you okay if I share the screen and you'll start reading?
Sure.
Okay, chapter 1. Are you able to see? Oh, no, not yet. Hold on. I didn't share my screen. So, Tomer, we did this last week. It worked pretty well. I have this Tanya that we use. Whoops. Here we go. Am I good or bad? So, and Tomer, we'll start with Era's reading, but if you're comfortable to read, we'll do page by page. You'll read a page and Era's will. And Levi will remain quiet the whole time because he's not showing his video. Okay, go for it. Era, start. Am I good or bad?
Am I good or bad? Section 1, 5 types of people. In his author's introduction, Rabbi Shneur Zalman revealed that the Tanya contains responses offered by me to many requests for advice posed constantly by all the members of our community in this country, each one at his own level, to seek advice for their souls in the worship of Hashem. While the Alter Rebbe did not record in the Tanya the requests for advice which were posed to him from the responses offered throughout the book, we can deduce the types of questions he was probably asked. If we were to reconstruct the request for advice the author addresses here in the opening of the book, it might read as follows. Rebbe, however hard I try to connect to Hashem, I feel like a failure. I want to come close to Hashem, but even when I succeed in religious practice, my inner demons still bother me. I have peak moments when I feel close to Hashem, but they are not sustainable.
See, doesn't this sound like us, like me? Okay, I turn the page.
Sounds like my everyday life.
Yep. What should I do? Will I ever?
What should I do? Will I ever succeed?
All right, Tomer, are you comfortable reading?
I am, but I'm doing the dishes, so I'm sort of just listening right now.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Aris. Continue. But are you able to hear Aris?
Yeah, 100%. The water, as you could, I don't know if you could hear it. It's very low. I'm not full blasting it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, go ahead, Aris.
To address this concern, the Tanya will offer us a meticulously structured guide to the inner life. We will learn how consciousness is multi-layered, and is influenced by a variety of different spiritual and physical forces. We will discover how our emotions function, as well as how our minds deduce to process information. And we will address fundamental questions of identity. Who am I? What do I do? What do I want?
Yeah, great questions.
After completing this initial discussion, we will have a powerful set of tools to manage self-awareness. We will know what we are capable of spiritually and what is beyond reach. We will be aware of our mental and emotional limitations, but we will continue to challenge them daily, implementing a realistic and effective method. In classic rabbinic style, the Tanya will frame this discussion of self-awareness with a series of questions on selected quotes from the Talmud. These questions will be posed here at the outset of Chapter 1. And after delving into the inner workings of human consciousness, the answers will be revealed in Chapter 13 and 14.
So in my community, that's actually the chapters I'm up to. And that's why I was so excited when Levi said he wanted to learn Tanya, because I'm getting a little bit more of the full picture. And I decided I wanted to share it and learn it with you guys because it's really nice. Levi, are you available to read? 5, 4. Okay, Levi, I'm taking that you're not available. Eris, 4 is yours.
Tanya, besides,
Hold on, Levi, you're here?
Yeah, but my phone just I see, but it's blank. Oh, never mind. I was zoomed in too much. Where am I starting from? What's up, man?
Thank God, brother. Good.
You want to start from the actual over here, the bottom, Tanya?
Yeah, but I don't. Where did it go? I see everybody. Oh, here it is.
Is it?
Oh no, I was listening. I wasn't following inside. Tell me where to read from.
from Tanya.
From the Tanya at the bottom, and it's up to you guys if you want to say the Hebrew and the English or just the English, whatever you
No,
want.
it's going to be too distracting for me. Okay, the rabbis taught that at the end of chapter 3 of Tractate Nida of the Talmud, before a child is born, his or her soul is made to swear an oath. Be a righteous person, a tzaddik, and do not be a wicked person, a rasha. And even if the entire world tells you you are righteous, you should consider yourself. No, you got to turn the page, I think.
I did.
Okay. Should like a wicked person. Is that the right?
Yeah.
Right? That's where you're up to?
Mm-hmm.
The Talmud's insistent that you should consider yourself like a wicked person seems to contradict another lesson taught by the Mishnah. Some clarification is needed because doesn't the Mishnah say in Tractate Avos chapter 2, Mishnah 13, the precise opposite? Don't consider yourself to be a wicked person. Practically speaking, there is an obvious reason why that advice of Tractate Nida that you should consider yourself like a wicked person might be counterproductive. And also, if you consider yourself like a wicked person, as Tractate Nida suggests, you will become downhearted and depressed, and you won't be able to worship God joyfully and positively. But if, on the other hand, you don't become sad at all from this wickedness of yours, you could come to be flippant. Is that how you say it? Flippant?
Yeah, it's like
about your moral
apathy.
and religious responsibilities, God forbid. This question will be fully answered much later in chapters 31 and 34. To solve this problem, we need to first define the terms righteous person.
So funny. The author is like pacing you. He's like giving you little details.
Yeah.
And he's saying you better continue this up until these chapters because you're not going to get your answers questions until then.
You're in it for the long haul. That's what he's telling you.
Now let's get to the explanation of these terms. For in the Talmud we find.
All right. 5 categories. Eric, do you want to take over?
Sure. Should I read in Hebrew also?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
So tzaddik v'tayvlai, the tzaddik who has a good in this world. Tzaddik v'ralai, the tzaddik who has a bad in this world. Rasha v'tayvlai, the Rasha who has a good in this world. Rasha v'ralai, the Rasha who has a bad in this world. Talmud Brachas 7a. Ubeineni, and the in-betweener, who is neither a tzaddik nor a Rasha, but has elements of both. The discussion in Tractate Brachos revolves around the classic theological question of why some righteous people suffer, the tzaddik who has it bad, while some wicked people prosper, the rasha who has it good. But that issue is not the Tanya's concern here. What is of interest is the Talmud's translation of these terms. Ufei Yershu Bagmara, and after dismissing various possible interpretations, the Talmud finally explains that the worldly fortune of misfortune of tzaddik is actually a reflection of his or her inner perfection. Tzaddik v'tayv like tzaddik gomer. The tzaddik who has it good in this world enjoys a fortunate life because he or she is totally righteous. Tzaddik v'ra like tzaddik she'ena gomer. The tzaddik who has it bad in this world suffers misfortune because he or she is not totally righteous. So the tzaddik she'ena gomer
is the tzaddik virale. Is the tzaddik that has it bad. He's not a complete.
Is that the one that's the one that's not born a tzaddik? That's the one like David HaMelech who had to fight for it. Is that considered like David HaMelech who had to fight for it? So he would be considered a tzaddik virale, tzaddik she'ena gomer.
Kind of. You'll have to wait till chapter 10 to. That's the chapter of the tzaddik. That's where once we have. So it's really cool because now understanding a little more of the perspective, what the Alter Rebbe first is going to do, explain to you what a neshama is, and then explain to you how we have two neshamas. And then explain to you what the tzaddik looks like, and then you'll be able to answer that question yourself on the tzaddik gomer and the tzaddik she'ena gomer.
Got it. Taken at face value, the term tzaddik who has a good and tzaddik who has a bad describe an external reality of worldly fortune or misfortune. But what piques the Tanya's interest here is the Talmud's translation of these terms as states of inner reality. The totally righteous tzaddik has clearly achieved a significantly greater degree of self-mastery than the not totally righteous tzaddik.
Cool. All right, I'm going to have to stop here. Erez, are you able to take notes on where we're up to for next week?
Sure.
There's no page.
You know what? I'll take a screenshot.
Okay, perfect.
1 second. So this is where we left off.
Okay, thank you guys. This was fun. The funnest part is being able to see Tomer.
It really was nice, man.
Okay, so we'll continue next week, same time, okay? In good health.
Awesome.
Tomer, get a haircut.
Right.